One of the biggest frauds that has ever been perpetrated on the human race is that of religion. All gods and goddesses, the God of Abrahamic religion and gods and goddesses of Hinduism and every pagan mythology, go back to the same group of people that lived over 15,000 years ago probably and came out of ancient Tyre. This group was related genetically, and they all come from the main characters of Greek mythology. All mythologies and religions are about this group of people that came out of ancient Tyre. This group traveled the world. They spread their agricultural cults and laws and mystery cults all around the world. They were able to do it because they had the genetics for tall stature, gigantism, and probably acromegaly. The biggest problem in the world at their time was cannibalism and savagery. One of the members of this family had their own child abducted, killed, and cannibalized, and that was the impetus for traveling the world and declaring laws and civilizing it. Those following my work know that I have uncovered the secrets of a library called the Loeb Library out of Harvard University, as well as other books from the British Library and books from around the world that reveal the truth about the Abrahamic God, the mythological gods and goddesses, and the past. A quick summary of what I have found to get us started is something I will just quickly give now. From one of these books by the ancient Greek scholar Diodorus Siculus and the Library of History, Volume 1, page 39 states, "And of the ancient Greek writers of mythology, some give to Osiris the name Dionysus, or with a slight change in form, Sirius. One of them, Eumpalus, in his Bacchic hymn, speaks of our Dionysus shining like a star, with fiery eye in every ray." Osiris was the first, they record, to make mankind give up cannibalism. For after Isis did discover the fruit of both wheat and barley, which grew wild over the land, along with the other plants, but was still unknown to man, and Osiris had also devised the cultivation of these fruits, all men were glad to change their food, both because of the pleasing nature of the newly discovered grains, and because it seemed to their advantage to refrain from the butchery of one another. As proof of the discovery of these fruits, they offer the following ancient custom, which they still observe. Even yet, at harvest time, the people make a dedication of the first heads of the grain to be cut, and standing beside the sheaf, beat themselves and call upon Isis, by this act rendering honor to the goddess for the fruits which she discovered at the season when she first did this. Moreover, in some cities, during the festival of Isis as well, stalks of wheat and barley are carried among the other objects in the procession as mentioned, as a memorial of what the goddess so ingeniously discovered at the beginning. Isis also established laws, they say, in accordance with which the people regularly dispense justice to one another, and are let to refrain through fear or punishment from illegal violence and insolence. And it is for this reason also that the early Greeks gave Demeter the name Thesmophorus, acknowledging in the in this way that she had first established their laws. We know from Greek mythology that Dionysus Osiris was the son of Zeus from Semele. Those following my work understand that he's the reincarnation of Zagreus, the child that Persephone had through her father, Zeus, and that child, as a toddler, was murdered and cannibalized by Titans. The heart was recovered. Some say that it was given to Semele. Some say that Zeus also took it after making it into a potion. He thus impregnated Semele, believing that he created a body for the reincarnation of Zagreus, who would be Dionysus Osiris. He is called twice born and sometimes thrice born because there was a previous Indian Dionysus, not related directly. Now, the Cronide, and that's who I call them because they're all, Zeus was the son of Cronus, and they were called the Cronides. Per my calculations, existed between 15,000 and 19,000 years ago. However, there is some literature that backs up what I'm saying as well by Diodorus Siculus in the Library of History. It says the number of years from Osiris and Isis, they say, to the reign of Alexander, who founded the city which bears his name in Egypt, is over 10,000. But according to other writers, a little less than 23,000. Now, Alexander the Great lived about 2,300 years ago. Put that together, and you get a time period between 12,000 and 25,000 years ago, which fits in quite nicely with the Manetho timeline. Manetho was an Egyptian scholar who documented the pharaoh bloodlines and their reigns. Now, the identity of Jehovah is given by a Roman scholar named Valerius Maximus in his book Memorable Deeds and Sayings, 1,000 Tales from Ancient Rome. Now, please listen. The Jews had tried to corrupt Roman values with their cult of Jupiter Sabazius, so the praetor forced them to go back to their home. Cornelius Hispanus expelled the Chaldeans from the city and ordered them to leave Italy within 10 days to prevent them from making money out of their foreign science. The Jews had tried to pass their religion on to Romans. So Hispanus expelled them from the city and demolished their private altars in the public places. The Senate decided that the temples of Isis and Serapis should be demolished, but none of the workers dared to touch the temples. The consul, Lucius Aemilius Paulus, took off his official striped toga, grabbed an axe, and smashed the doors of the temple. Now, the identity of Satan, who is Lucifer and Prometheus, is given through various hints in these ancient texts and is directly stated by Helen Blavatsky in The Secret Doctrine. She says, hence the allegory of Prometheus, who steals the divine fire so as to allow men to proceed consciously on the earth or on the path of spiritual evolution, thus transforming the most perfect of animals on earth into a potential god, and making him free to take the kingdom of heaven by violence. Hence also the curse pronounced by Zeus against Prometheus, and by Jehovah Ildebiath against his rebellious son, in quotes, Satan. Okay, I have found art at the Boston Art Museum of a sculpture called Zeus Sabazius, so it backs up this claim and the terminology. And those following my work know that I've done extensive research into this to prove that Prometheus is Satan and Lucifer and Set out of Egypt. Now, what I've come up with is my theory called the mythological unification theory. Those following my work know that I adjust it as I find out more information, but I have tried to show through texts from the ancient libraries and comparative mythology and anthropology and archaeology that These same people are the core of all mythologies and religions, and their symbols are similar across the board. There will be some variations in the story or the symbols, but it is the same. And to determine this, I found the key. The key is the murdered son and the Sacred Heart bloodline. In all of these mythologies, you have the Father God who has a son teaching the people good ways and is murdered by Titans or Set or traitors, and he is thus eventually to come back and basically his murder is rectified. Now, how do I know the nature of these people? I know it because in the Book of Enoch, from the Pseudepigrapha, the Watchers and God are described as snow white. In the Bible, the Nephilim, which are the product of the fallen angels or Watchers, and the human women, are gigantic in stature and become the men of renown. As I just showed you, Zeus is Jehovah. One of his sons was Heracles. Heracles had to wrestle another giant named Antaeus out of Libya. Antaeus was his cousin. Antaeus' father was Poseidon, and some say the mother was Gaia, but others say that just was symbolic. And Heracles' father was Zeus, and therefore making them first cousins. The way that Heracles killed the giant, Antaeus, who was basically murdering people, was that he lifted him up from the ground and squeezed the life out of him. Now, if this person is a giant who's over 7, 8, 9 feet tall, there's no way an ordinary man, even 6 foot, is going to be able to lift some guy who's over 7, 8, 9 feet, weighing over 350 or 500 pounds. He's got to be of the same stature. So Antaeus was classified as a giant. Genetically related to Heracles means Heracles was also a giant. We also know that Heracles strangled a lion to death. No ordinary man is going to be able to do that. The equivalent of Heracles in Nordic religion is Thor, and in the Sumerian it would be Gilgamesh, and in the Bible it would be Saint Michael. Now, the other sons of God and the daughters of God, who's Zeus, traveled with him when they were spreading their agricultural cults. It is my theory that Gabriel, the messenger, would be Hermes, as Hermes is the messenger of the gods. Raphael would be Apollo. They were both doctors and healers. And I think Ariel would be more like Athena. She was a teacher of the arts and crafts. Prometheus, Lucifer, Satan, Set is his Egyptian identity, took part in the murder of Dionysus Osiris, thus falling from the grace of heaven forever. And that is the basis of this bloodline story. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the Watchers and the fight between Kronos and his brother Iapetus, which was the beginning of the fight between this bloodline with its own bloodline. Okay, let's start with the works of Diodorus Siculus and his Library of History. In that series, he discusses the Titans and their fights between each other on ancient Tyre. And Cronus and his brother Iapetus were close, and after Cronus had to kill his father Uranus for attacking and beating up his mother Gaia and threatening to kill him and his siblings, Iapetus and Cronus made a pact to kind of stick together, and they ended up killing another brother named Hyperion, who was moving into a position of power, and they didn't like that. And they split up the kingdom. Now, here's what Diodorus Siculus writes. After the death of Hyperion, the myth relates the kingdom was divided among the sons of Uranus, the most renowned of whom were Atlas and Cronus. Of the sons, Atlas received as his part the regions of the coast of the ocean, and he not only gave the name Atlanteans to his people, but likewise called the greatest mountain in the land Atlas. They also say that he perfected the science of astrology and was the first to publish to mankind the doctrine of the sphere, and was for this reason that the idea was held that the entire heavens were supported upon the shoulders of Atlas. The myth darkly hinting in this way at his discovery and description of the sphere. That's from Diodorus Siculus's Library of History. Now, Iapetus had a son named Atlas, but Iapetus was also referred to as Atlas. So when you go to New York and down to Rockefeller Center, and you see the big Prometheus statue, and above it on the building Zeus, and in one portion of the Rockefeller Center, if you look hard enough on the wall, you'll see Cronus with the farming tools that he invented. And on another area nearby, you'll see Iapetus, who people think is Atlas. Even though that is his name, but it's not the son of Atlas. It was Iapetus with the sphere on his back. So I'm sure Rockefeller, being a Freemason and an elite, knew all about this history. Now, I just revealed to you that Iapetus, the brother of Cronos, invented the science of astrology and published it to mankind. That is one of the things that the fallen angels were condemned for. Now, let's go to another book by Sanchonathan, who was a Phoenician scholar. Remember, these people started off in Tyre and Cronus created the city of Phoenicia for his half-sister Ashtoreth, and Rhea took her children more towards Crete and Greece. Here is what happened to the brother of Cronus. Let's listen closely. After these events, Cronus builds a wall round about his habitation and found Byblus, the first city of Phoenicia. Afterwards, Cronus, suspecting his own brother Atlas, by the advice of Hermes, threw him into a deep cavern in the earth and buried him. Now that's by Sanchonathan, History of the Ancient World, translated by Isaac Preston Corey. Again, Hermes is really Thoth. It's not the same as the son Hermes of Zeus. You'll find when you start getting into these ancient texts that a lot of the names are repeated. It's not the same people, so you really have to get to the text to find out who they're talking about, because sometimes Thoth is called Hermes, but it's not the son of Zeus. Thoth was a counselor to Cronos, and he was given a city in Egypt eventually when Cronos came into power. So now, I want to say one more thing here about Zeus from Diodorus Siculus. What I just read to you was Cronus going after his brother, killing him and putting him under the ground, which is a description of what happened to the fallen angels or the Watchers. But there was also a war on the giants, and those would be the Nephilim. And that war was the war of Zeus and the giants. And there is a book of the Bible called Book of the Wars of the Lord, and it's nowhere to be found. Now, Diodorus Siculus states, this is the following: Zeus also had other wars against the giants, we are told, in Macedonia near Pallene and in Italy, and on the plain which of old was named Phlegrean or Fiery, after the region about which had been burned, but which in later times men called Cumian. Now, the giants were punished by Zeus because they had treated the rest of mankind in a lawless fashion, and confiding in their bodily superiority and strength had enslaved their neighbors. And because they were also disobeying the rules of justice which he was laying down, and were raising up war against those whom all mankind considered to be gods because of their benefactions, they were conferring upon men generally. Zeus, then, we are told, not only totally eradicated the impious and evildoers from among mankind, but he also distributed honors, as they were merited, among the noblest of the gods and heroes and men. And because of the magnitude of his benefactions and his superior power, all men accorded to him as with one voice both the everlasting kingship which he possesses and his dwelling upon Mount Olympus. Okay, so I just told you that they had all the bodily strength, superior strength to men. They were giants. The giants were enslaving humans. They were being terrible to them. And Cronus started off by getting rid of Iapetus, who it appears to me would be the leader of the fallen angels initially, and was out on the north coast of Africa teaching the sciences of astrology and other things. And Cronus started off by killing him, and Zeus finished up killing the other giants and offspring. Now, to prove my point, let's go to the Book of Enoch out of the Pseudepigrapha. There's 3 versions of the Book of Enoch. The one that is the most revealing would be the Ethiopian. Let us start by reading this. In those days, when the children of man had multiplied, it happened that these were born unto them handsome and beautiful daughters. And of the angels, the children of heaven saw them and desired them. And they said to one another, come, let us choose wives for ourselves from among the daughters of man, and beget us children. And Semyaz, and there's multiple pronunciations and spellings for that leader. Okay, and Semyaz, being their leader, and unto them, I fear that perhaps you will not consent that this deed should be done, and I alone will become responsible for this great sin. But they all responded to him, let us all swear an oath, and bind everyone among us by a curse not to abandon this suggestion, but to do the deed. Then they all swore together and bound one another by the curse, and they were altogether 200, and they descended into Ardos, which is the summit of Hermon. And they called the mount Armon, for they swore and bound one another by a curse. And their names are as follows. Semyaz, the leader of Arakib, Rael, Tamel, Ramel, Danel, Ezekiel, Barakuel, Azel, Armoresel, Batarel, Ananel, Zagiel, Sasomaspa, Ael, Castarel, Turel, Yamayol, and Arazel. These are their chiefs of tens, and of the others with them. Okay, let's continue on. And they took wives unto themselves, and everyone respectively chose one woman for himself. And they began to go on to them, and they taught them magical medicine, incantations, the cutting of roots, and taught them about plants. And the women became pregnant, and gave birth to great giants, whose heights were 300 cubits. These giants consumed the produce of all the people, until the people detested feeding them. So the giants turned against the people in order to eat them. And they began to sin against birds, wild beasts, reptiles, and fish, and their flesh was devoured, the one by the other, and they drank blood. And then the earth brought an accusation against the oppressors. Okay, that is Book of Enoch from the Pseudepigrapha. Now let's continue. Then Michael, Seraphel, and Gabriel observed carefully from the sky, and they saw much blood being shed upon the earth, and all the oppression being wrought upon the earth. And they said to one another, the earth from her empty foundation has brought the cry of their voice unto the gates of heaven. And now, O holy ones of heaven, the souls of people are putting their case before your pleading. Bring our judgment before the Most High. And they said to the Lord of the potentates, for he is the Lord of lords, and the God of gods, and the King of kings, and the seat of the glory stands throughout all the generations of the world. Your name is everything, and with you is the authority for everything. Everything is naked and open before your sight, and you see everything, and there is nothing which can hide itself from you. You see what Azrael has done. Now he has taught all forms of oppression upon the earth, and they revealed eternal secrets which are performed in heaven, and which man learned. Moreover, Samias, to whom you had given power to rule over his companions, cooperating, they went in unto the daughters of the people on earth, and they lay together with them, with those women, and they gave birth to giants, to the degree that the whole earth was filled with blood and oppression. And now, behold, the Holy One will cry, and those who have died will bring their suit up to the gate of heaven. Their groaning has ascended into heaven. Okay, again, from the Pseudepigrapha, Book of Enoch, we get an idea of what these watchers look like, and the angels as well. It says, and they lifted me up into one place where there were the ones like the flaming fire, and when they so desire, they appear like men. And they took me into a place, whirlwind in the mountain. The top of its summit was reaching into heaven. And I saw a chamber of light and thunder in the ultimate end of the depth toward the place where the bow, the arrow, and their quiver, and a fiery sword, and all the lightnings were. So they appear like men. And as I continue on, you will see that they are the color of snow. They're white, Caucasoid. Again, from the Book of Enoch. Thus it happened after this, that my spirit passed out of sight, and ascended into the heavens. And I saw the sons of the holy angels walking upon the flames of fire. Their garments were white, and their overcoats and the light of their faces was like snow. Also I saw 2 rivers of fire, the light of which fire was shining like hyacinth. Okay, he just told you they were white. Their faces were like snow. Okay, now, interestingly enough, he talked about crystals, Enoch did. It says, he carried off my spirit, and I, Enoch, was in the heaven of heavens. There I saw in the midst of that light a structure built of crystals, and between those crystals tongue of living fire. Now, in another passage, he describes God as white. And I saw countless angels, 100,000 times 100,000, 10 million times 10 million encircling that house. Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, Phanuel, and numerous other holy angels that are in heaven above go in and out of that house. Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, Phanuel, and numerous other holy angels that are countless. With them is the antecedent of time. His head is white and pure like wool, and his garment is indescribable. I fell on my face, my whole body mollified, and my spirit transformed. Okay, I can continue on. There's so many passages in this Book of Enoch that describes the angels as snow white. Here's another one. Again, I saw the commencing to gore and devour one another. So the earth began to cry. And I lifted my eyes unto heaven, and I saw a vision. And behold, there came from heaven a being in the form of a snow white person. One came out of that place, and 3 others with him. And it continues on. There's, like I said, there's multiple passages that continually talk about the angels being snow white. They were white. They were Caucasoid. They were of large stature. Okay? I maintain that these people mated with each other. They carried on their genetics for gigantism or large stature and possibly acromegaly. So there you have it. Now, these giants and, whatever they were, the Nephilim, whatever you want to call them, they traveled the world. And there's talk of red-haired giants all in the Americas. And many of them were cannibals and oppressive. Specifically, I've been looking into this Lovelock Cave area. And out of this Lovelock Cave in ancient Nevada, they were said to be cannibals, but at war with the Paiute. And the Paiute are trying to prevent any kind of testing of ancient bodies. And it's because they don't want the genetics to show that they were Caucasoid people. You could get into my book, The Lovelock Cave Mystery, that I'm going to be publishing. And I get into some detail about the description of the red-haired men and females that were found in that cave, that their bodies have either ended up in the Smithsonian or the Nevada State Museum or the University of California. There was some stuff on the internet showing large skulls and regular-sized skulls that were dolichocephalic, but those have disappeared. And nobody wants to say they have anything due to NAGPRA. NAGPRA prevents any DNA testing or examination of ancient remains in America, and conveniently the wonderful so-called Native American tribes always tend to claim these bodies when they, really it's not them. Now, another thing I want to talk about real quick is the Malta boy out of Siberia. Actually, there were 2 bodies. One was like 17,000 years old. The other was 24,000 years old, found in Siberia. That they don't have NAGPRA over there, so the Russians were able to test it, and they proved out European and Asian DNA and connections to Native Americans. Native Americans are probably mixed race. And to me, I think there were other invasions by Phoenicians looking for copper and other things, and they were setting up what you want to call civilizations that included, human sacrifice and at times cannibalism. The Anasazi are related to the basket makers, and the basket makers are related to the Lovelock Cave people. And, it says in certain times the Anasazi were practicing cannibalism, which is a very controversial subject as well. And then you look at, in Mexico, the Aztecs, and before them, the Toltecs and the Olmecs, and they all had, some elongated head type of deformation, which looks to me like they were mimicking gigantism or those with acromegaly, which probably came from the genetics of this ancient group of Phoenicians out of Tyre. And some of the, they didn't get exterminated until later. But, and you can find, statues and pottery of men with beards, which is not typical of an Asian, Native American people. So all of this is, very controversial. I just gave you a quick overview. To summarize it, look into my work on this hidden human story from the ancient libraries, from ancient literature that's kept from the public. And you will find that This is a complete fraud. All religions are a complete fraud, and it's based on this ancient group of people who probably had the genetics for gigantism or tall stature or acromegalia, and they ruled the average size human, and they came into different groups and became the leader, just as Dionysus Osiris set up the pharaoh ship in Egypt, and Prometheus set up his own pharaoh ship. So all of these, very tall people, they set up their rulerships and could not be challenged due to their height and strength advantage. Okay, I've shown you that these people were of tall stature, and they probably had the genetics for gigantism and acromegalia. And I also showed in this video a screenshot of a class that posted notes online comparing ancient giant skulls to an average skull and stating that giant skull had acromegalia. Now, these people also had hair, and it's described in the ancient writings. Hera was golden-haired. Zeus is usually auburn. Demeter, his sister, would have wheaten hair, and Prometheus, red hair. Now, from the book of Plutarch called Moralia, he writes about Prometheus. Now, Prometheus is also Set, or Typhon, in Egypt, and he writes, "But the power of Typhon, weakened and crumbled, but still fighting and struggling against extinction. They try to console and mollify by certain sacrifices, but again, there are times when at certain festivals they humiliate and insult him by assailing red-headed men with jeering and by throwing an ass over the edge of a precipice, as the people of Copta do, because Typhon had red hair and in color resembled an ass." And continuing, it says, "The Egyptians, because of their belief that Typhon was of red complexion, also dedicated to sacrifice such of their neat cattle as are of red color, because they conduct the examination of these so scrupulously that if an animal has but one hair black or white, they think it wrong to sacrifice it, for they regard as suitable for sacrifice not what is dear to the gods, but the reverse, namely such animals as have incarnate in them souls of unholy and unrighteous men who have been transformed into other bodies." So, this is what the Jews do. They sacrifice a red heifer and use the ashes to purify the world. It's basically signifying killing Satan, Lucifer, or Prometheus Set. It goes back to Egypt. And this is all part of their cult of Jupiter Sabazius, as well as circumcision, which comes from Cronus. It's an atonement ritual. And you could go on my blog. I wrote about that as well. Now, what's interesting to me is this Hollywood presentation of this Snow White androgen. And I'm going to talk about that. Now, you'll see this androgen in several Hollywood movies. I just took a quick look on the internet, and Earth Final Conflict has it, The Planet of the Apes has it, Aleister Crowley's Contact Named Lamb is one, The Wizard of Oz has it, Star Trek has it, the Strangers in Dark City are these androgens, Prometheus. To me, this is some kind of a and also Mel Gibson's depiction of Satan in Passion of the Christ is also this white androgen. It goes back to their cult of Jupiter Sabazius and the Qliphoth, and Prometheus, who is represented as this androgen, hermaphrodite type character. And I don't know if this is going back to something before these cronides. All of my research indicates a duality in gender with this family of cronides. They're humans. They just had the genetics for gigantism, and acromegaly, or tall stature, and by mating within their bloodlines, they kept that genetic advantage. And then there was calculated breeding and calculated murder of those with that tall stature. If they weren't, a good people, or, if they were incredibly oppressive, they were exterminated, and so was their bloodline. And I would tend to think that they bred down marrying average-sized women and lost the genetics by marrying outside of their bloodline. It just couldn't be kept for that long. However, we know that those genetics are still in existence in the population today. And I also did a very good bloodline analysis to determine the bloodline of Zeus. And it's all over. It's pretty prevalent in the European race. All of the leaders came from him. Probably the whole Irish race came from his pharaonic bloodline. Some of it even into the Asian population. I tend to think, and possibly into some of these Mesoamerican. Possibly, maybe not. Definitely something probably related to him with some of the images that look very Phoenician, and bearded men, and stories of red-haired giants. So I'm not really sure about this Hollywood presentation of the androgen. It may have something to do with Helen Blavatsky and this mysterious book of Daisen. I talk about that in another video and on my blog. It could be something that came before them. And, there's talk that they had incredible technology or access to it, which is something I'll discuss in another video. And that may have come from something before them in Atlantis, which is not only discussed by Plato, but also Diodorus Siculus. So, in conclusion, this family had tall stature, gigantism, and acromegaly, and their incredible size and strength gave them the advantage, and most of them were cruel. However, Zeus became the leader, and he eradicated those that were just not acceptable, and his bloodline ruled. And I'm not really sure if they rule much today, what's left on those thrones. Right now, the priestcraft from him that created cults around him and his family are in rulership, as well as the very rich elite. By the way, elite comes from Elohim, and I've already shown in the book of Sanchonathan, those are the followers of Kronos, not Saturn. So, we're not quite sure what is, in charge with these elites. But I would say that the Catholics follow Zeus and his mother Rhea and the Dionysian cults. The Jews have their own cults of Jupiter Sabazius that include worship of Cronus. And the Muslims just kind of take from that, and it was made up, by Muhammad. The Hindus, their gods and goddesses are these Cronides. I talk about that. Dionysus would be the equivalent of Krishna. Indra would be the equivalent of Zeus, Agni, Prometheus, and so on. And all the pagan, mythologies I've already talked about earlier are the same people. So, in the Americas as well. So that is the hidden history, or I wouldn't say history, I would say story on this planet. Okay, again from the Book of Enoch, the Ethiopian version, I want to read what the fallen angels taught and did that got them into trouble. Well, they had taken the women as wives and created Nephilim with them, but let's read here. Okay, and Azazel taught the people the art of making swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and he showed to their chosen ones bracelets, decorations, shadowing of the eye with antimony, ornamentation, the beautifying of the eyelids, all kinds of precious stones, and all coloring tinctures and alchemy. And there were many wicked ones, and they committed adultery and erred, and all their conduct became corrupt. Amasras taught incantation and the cutting of roots, and Armaros, the resolving of incantations, and Baraquiel, astrology, and Kokorel, the knowledge of the signs, and Tamel taught the seeing of the stars, and Asterel taught the course of the moon, as well as the deception of man. And the people cried, and their voices reached unto heaven. So, as I had already revealed, the brother of Cronus, Iapetus, taught astrology. There's two of these watchers. Baraquiel says astrology, and Kokorel, the knowledge of the signs. That may be Iapetus, but at the same time, Iapetus was given leadership via Kronos, which almost puts him close to Samyaza. So it's kind of tough to tell. If I find more information, I'll reveal that. But definitely, Iapetus would be either Baraquiel, Kokorel, or Samyaza. Okay, so that's about it. I've shown you these writings that prove out that these ancient watchers were Caucasoid giants. They, were prolific breeders, and their offspring traveled the world and ruled it. And those that were disgusting individuals were exterminated off. And I would bet that the Coronide bloodline, eventually bred with average-sized humans, and they bred down, and whatever's left of them would be remnants of this royal, bloodline, and some of it sits on the throne, and some of it doesn't. We don't know exactly where some of these so-called royals came from, but it all goes back to ancient Tyre and these ancient giant Phoenicians. So that's it. That's my presentation on the Watchers and Angels and Nephilim and God revealed. Thank you.